Okay. I think we finally got it. So we might still have some kinks to work out. I did upgrade a little bit of the equipment. So we'll see. Get a little bit of time and see what it does. I was listening to the radio the other day, and that song from Hank Williams Jr. came on, about how all his friends who were his party friends all settled down and gone on to do other things, right? What's that song? All my rowdy friends have settled down. Nobody really wants to do anything anymore. So it kind of brings to light what a lot of us call, periods of life, stages of life. You know, it's not the way we look at it in Ascension, because in Ascension we call it kind of reality collapses. In your human reality, you're going to call it, it's just basically how things change and how things move on and how people move on to different stages of their life. And you might feel like you get stuck in the stage for a longer period of time and everybody else kind of moves on to something else. You know, they move on to get married, they move on to have kids. They just continue to move on. And if you haven't done that, you start to get this feeling that you've sort of gotten left behind, right? Or you're not following the path how it's laid out for you. Now, just be aware that that is a very normal thing to feel when you're in your human realities, because even though everyone has a similar cadence, you know, all the human templates are built in a similar fashion, in a sense, and a lot of people go through certain life stages at certain times. That's why they call it midlife crisis and midlife crisis, because everyone hits that at the same time. But that's not because crisis is a human crisis. People hit those at certain times because that's when a lot of people start their awakening process, right? So it kind of gets camouflaged a lot of other things, right? It gets camouflaged in a lot of the human mentality of what it is, because you're now going against the grain of what you should be doing, so we have to call it something else, right? We have to call it a crisis, we have to call it a problem. That's just how the human consciousness keeps everyone sort of in the same box without having anybody really breaking out of that box. They try to keep everyone in the same one. Now, by doing that, when you start getting into certain parts of your human experience, you notice when things start to shift, and you know, realities start to collapse. And even though you wouldn't call them that, when you're in your ascension process and look back on your human consciousness, you notice a lot of that stuff more. You know, you have the awareness. You can always see realities when you're at a higher consciousness looking back at them. You can't see it when you're in it. When you're in these realities, you can't see it. That's why when you see other people making a certain mistake you made, and you're like, oh yeah, I understand. You know, I understand what's going on there. Why can't they see it? Because they're in the middle of it. Can't see it when you're in the middle of it. You just see a part of it. You see a facet of it. You can't see the whole thing. It's impossible to see the whole thing, right? It's just, you just can't do it. So as we go through Ascension, you're going to get that same feeling when you look back and you see things, and you see how, you know, even back in human consciousness, realities change. You know, they collapsed on you. And sometimes you go through huge collective shifts. You know, if you were in the collective that was getting married in your 20s, you did all that. If you were in the collectives that were going to college, you went to college at a certain age. You know, you still had collectives you linked up to, even if it was not higher consciousness collectives at the time. You still went with certain groups, right? You know, even when you had the COVID realities hit, I can remember distinctly going out before COVID, you know, and I would always meet so many people and see so many people, and everything was very open and chatty. And as soon as COVID hit, even years after, they would say those realities ended. You know, even though they didn't really end. They kind of still in a way dragging out in a lot of different places, depending on where you are with it. But I pushed a lot of people inside, and it was a huge part of collective. And when that whole thing came through. But I can remember trying to go out after, years later, even when everything opened back up again and things were supposed to be more normal, and it was not the same. No one was there. I was like, wow, this is nowhere near what it was before. I remember a totally different time than what I'm seeing right now. This is really not what I remember, and no one's going anywhere anymore. No, everyone's kind of niched at home because everyone kind of went through their own individual shifts, and then they started linking up to different collectives, right? And all of a sudden, you kind of can feel once again that the reality is kind of collapsing, and what started as kind of a self-imposed, everyone disconnected from it, and that's why it collapsed. So you can kind of understand what starts happening when you start quantum jumping, which means you're just moving through realities really, really fast. That's basically what it means. You don't spend a lot of time in them. You don't spend all that human time in them like you used to. Really getting kind of bogged down in them and going through realities for years and years and years and years. You start to see, like, when you look at just the COVID realities, connecting from certain realities without being there. So first your physical body gets removed, and then energetically over time, over linear time, you start to cut the course of those realities. And all of a sudden you're not in that collective anymore. You're not in that group anymore. All of a sudden you're now moving to different groups. And that causes a lot of realities to come to an end for us. And when you're in your human consciousness, we kind of see more as a collapse in a sense. Like, this one is collapsing. Now I've got to go into a different one. You don't willingly jump from place to place to place like you do in Ascension. Because in Ascension, you understand the reality. In human consciousness, we didn't understand the reality, so we didn't have the ability to jump. We didn't have the ability to move and move and move and move and move and move like we do in Ascension, because our consciousness can understand the construction of the reality we've now landed in, and if we want to stay in it, or how long we have to stay in it. If we get everything we need to get out of it and have given what we needed to give to the other people in the reality in 3 weeks, we don't need to drag this shit out for 3 years. It's just a waste of our time and a waste of our energy, because we start to understand that energy is time, energy is money, and we're not wasting it. We're not wasting ourselves anymore on realities that don't make sense. So we kind of stop wasting ourselves. And if there's one thing to remember, think of it in a sense. Don't waste yourself in realities when you see there's nothing coming out of them, and not from a selfish point of view. We don't not participate in a reality because we're not getting something out of it. That's a human consciousness, the way of thinking about it. You have to shift it to the point where, is it a purpose for anybody here? You know what I mean? Not, wait, I'm not getting anything out of this. And even if in ascended realities, everyone's getting something out of them. Okay, even human realities, technically everyone's getting something out of it. You might be getting triggered to clear something, and it might feel like a miserable reality, but you got something out of it. No one gets shortchanged in any reality. You just might not be getting what you wanted to get out of it, but you're getting something. Even if you're getting the courage to leave it, you're getting something out of it. And ascended realities are kind of no different. But if there's no purpose for anyone in it anymore, everyone's gone as far as they're going. Everyone has gone as far as they're going to go. No one's going any farther. No one's pushing forward anymore. The people in your reality, they've gone as far as they're going to go with Ascension in this moment, even if it's just their awakening or the pre-awakening. They're not moving anywhere else for maybe another 5, 6 years, whatever. There's no point. And that's what you start to understand. It's not, what am I getting out of it? Is there a purpose here? And if it's not a purpose here, you jump to the next one. And they call it quantum jumping. That's a term I've heard. Because some people could call it, reality hopping. It's just you're going through different realities quicker. And some you just jump right over because you don't feel the need to be in it at all. You've done it. You've seen it. Whereas humans, we tend to get every reality our human consciousness sees in a way wants to participate in, because we feel like it's there, that's our only option, because there it is. Right? We kind of don't understand there's another one. There's more than just another one. There's a billion of them. Which one do you want to be in, and is there a reason to be here? And not just the human reasons, like money, sex, love, health, which is why a lot of the reasons why a human does a lot of different things, and they view love differently, health differently. They view a lot of that stuff differently, but it's all very self-serving. And even if you're in the other sense where I'm not in realities for I'm in realities for other people, it's still a martyrism there where you're trying to get make yourself feel better about yourself by being there. And, you know, there's no reality you're in a human consciousness that isn't about you, starts with you, ends with you, and is all about you. One way or the other. With the only exception I will, and I don't know if it's even an exception, but when you bring kids in, depending on if you're an unconscious parent or a conscious parent and where you are with your journey, that's going to be a little different as to if you can see it. But that still has to do with the consciousness of what you're doing. If not, you're just fulfilling soul contracts. You're not actively participating in rewriting the agreement in a sense, or really understanding it's a contract. You just were a victim to it. You're a victim to everything that collapses. You're going to be a victim to everything. You have no agency, right? You know, that's a word everyone throws around now. You have no agency. These characters in the story have no agency. In your human realities, you have no agency. You have no free will. You have no agency. You created it all. You're walking through it. You're going to go to A, B, C, and D. That's how you've structured it. You go through certain patterns. You know, you're going to link up to this collective here. Now I'm going to go to this collective, now this collective. And yes, you have some people who didn't follow what would be considered the human norm, but they're still following a norm created by somebody else. It might just not be the more accepted collective, but it's still a collective. It's still not a conscious collective, right? It's still a different twist on it in a sense. You know, it's maybe more conscious decisions from an unconscious place, but it's still not conscious. You might not be doing the road completely traveled. You're doing the road a little less traveled, but it's still got a path worn on it, right? It's still some people you're trying to, you know, gravitate toward in a sense. Whereas when you start with ascension, it's kind of a totally winding a different road in a sense. You're going in a different direction. You're not. You're using and picking things for a different reason. In the beginning, you're not even doing that because your universe is pushing you by giving you no other option, right? When I said before, there's always a billion other options. For a while, there's not going to be. Because think about it like this: if you have a billion options, and your human wants to do the ones your human wants to do, not the ones your soul wants you to do. So what your soul will do is take away all the other options except the ones that soul aligned, the highest line for you in that moment, and everything else is not happening for you, okay? They're going to feel like very limited options because your soul is definitely tired of pointing the way and saying, go this way, and you kind of ignoring it. It's now saying, okay, now you're going to go this way. You know, we're not going to ease you along anymore. Now you're going to go this way, and you're going to go through this reality because you don't want to. And it's the easiest way. It might not feel easiest for your human, but it's the quickest path to get to where you want to go. And that's when you start to be able to, have the awareness of that, then you start to be able to jump. And you're not waiting for stuff to collapse anymore. And even far into your ascension process, you still might allow things to collapse because you want to hang on to them. And we talk a lot on this channel about hanging on to them and not wanting them to, with something in it we were getting out of it, we just don't want to let them go. So even in ascension, there will be certain ways we want it to go. Certain people we want to come with us. We don't like the reality or we're the only ones there. It's not, ascension is not what you're going to think it's going to be because you live a very sovereign life. It's not like your human existence. You don't have the shackles and the emotions of the human existence because you're not bound anymore. So realities collapsed before because we couldn't see they were starting to go. We didn't want them to go. So we kind of got pushed out of the nest. We just followed the path that had been laid out. In ascension, you have to forge a totally different path. You're not even walking on a path that is a little, it hasn't been traveled as much, but someone's walked on it. You're macheting through, trying to figure out which way to go, because there is no path. Your human doesn't know the way. It hasn't mapped it out. Your soul knows where you're going, but your human is not going to like it. And that's when you really, once you stop listening to the part of your consciousness, that aspect of you, your human aspect, where to go, what to do next, it gets so much easier to go through the ascension process, because you're not bound by the human systems anymore. And that's one of the toughest things to work through, because it's embedded in your body. It's in your body consciousness. You compare everything to your human experience and how that was going. And we tend to glorify it. You know, we tend to think, oh, it was so great. You know, it was so great we wouldn't have wanted to go. I mean, we wouldn't have looked for other reasons. And you wouldn't have doorwayed into your awakening process, no matter how you ended up there. You know, normally people end up there because stuff's not working in their human consciousness, in those realities, their human realities. They just don't say, oh, everything's so great over here. Let me just throw all that away and go do something else over here. That's why it's really tough. If it's not someone's time to leave human consciousness, you're not dragging them out of there. You know, and we can't quantum jump with people on our back. We can't quantum jump with people. That's a solo journey. You can't go with people as you jump through different realities. You can't bring them with you. And they might show up there. They might not, you know. You don't know that until you jump, and you don't know that until you get to the next place. You don't know that you get to the next reality and see, okay, what's the purpose of this one? And after a while, you might think, okay, there's no purpose left anymore. But we notice that so much, we notice it so much quicker, because we use our whole body field to notice it. We use our whole body to understand it. We use our whole body to explore it. It's not just us looking at it going, oh, I don't know, maybe it's fine. You know, maybe this reality, there's a purpose. After a while, you start to see the purpose is waning. And that means the reality is waning. Things start to shift in the reality. People used to maybe go and do things on a certain day of the week. Now they stop doing that. They're not participating in things the way they used to. You start to see the reality start to chip away, and it starts to disintegrate. And you're starting to see it revolve and move and breathe, in a sense. And you can start to understand that. In our human consciousness, all these things happened. We just didn't have the awareness to identify them. We don't have the awareness to see them. So we tend to think for a while that none of it occurred. You know, like, oh my God, all of a sudden I feel more like I understand what's going to happen in this reality. I understand where all this stuff is going. It's not that you didn't have it before. It's just that you didn't have the consciousness to see it. So humans can't jump. You know, we can do a lot of stuff about quantum jumping. Human consciousness can't do that. It doesn't have the body awareness to jump. It'll set in a reality. It won't see the signs. It won't understand energetically that it's ending. It won't understand there's no purpose to it. And we're talking a soul purpose to it, not a human purpose to it. You know, you start to identify very quickly what's the purpose of the reality. It's consciousness. You'll do a lot of realities like that. They might not be ones you want to be in, because you might be with people completely unconscious. But if you don't learn to be able to be around people in a different consciousness and hold your consciousness, then you can move on to the next step. But for a human, we might not want to go do that reality. But you might not understand when you get in there. Because like I said, you can't understand when you're in the reality, in a sense. You won't understand. Your consciousness gets to you hit a different part with your consciousness, your body radiates to a different frequency, then you can look back on it, you can look down on the reality you were in maybe 6 months ago or a year ago, and understand it. And understand, okay, now I understand why I'm here. Now I understand why I have to be around people who are at a different consciousness, because I have to see, can I hold mine? How do I affect the field? What am I doing that's changing everything around where I am? You know, what do I have the capacity to do? And then you also start to notice when people aren't around, how much more energy you have. You know, these are the things you start to notice, and these are the things you start to pick apart. So when we talk about quantum jumping, if you can't read your field, you can't quantum jump. You can't see when there's something coming, in a sense. You can't be ready. You know, a lot of other things about quantum jumping is you have to finish everything up that's in that old reality before you can go, because all those are tethers. You know, if in this reality you had to complete A, B, and C, and not done it, and now everything starts constricting on us because we have to go to the next reality, but we haven't finished this yet. So a lot of times you'll know, get everything finished. Everything you're supposed to do today, get it done, because tomorrow you might jump to a totally different reality, and this stuff is preventing that. you're hindering your own progress. As humans, we hinder our own progress all the time because we procrastinate everything. There's a reason humans procrastinate. They don't want to move that fast. It's almost you're self-sabotaging yourself. Everyone probably that's going to watch this now or watching this later is something you have to do that you're not doing. I have something right now I've got to go do that I'm not doing. I'm going to try to do it after this. So, but I can see I got to do it because it's bothering me. It's pressing on me in a sense. But we all feel that stuff. It's just how long are you going to let that kind of compress? Because what that is that's showing you, as soon as you do that, you're going to open up something else. And it might seem like these things are not related. Like I've got to go do this and then this is going to happen. I've got to go do this because this is going to make it easier down the road. I did a video a couple weeks ago about, I totally forgot what I was going to say. I don't remember what it was. Yeah, I don't remember. That might be my sign to kind of just sign off early today. Because I just wanted to test this stuff out because it has been greatly lacking this year. My streams as far as audio, video, all of it. So I wanted to get on and test it out. If I think about that point before I go, I don't even remember what it was. I can't remember. Yeah, it's gone. So we're going to end today. We're going to make this one quick. I am going to move these streams to Saturday. So if you're watching this on YouTube and you do want to catch a live, I will be on Saturdays, I think, from now on. I'm not sure of the time yet. All right. Bye.